It's All Things Considered, and I'm Dave Lawrence. We're continuing our Off the Road series, interviews with noted touring musicians around the world, sharing how they've been touched by the virus and other crises. Hear everything we've aired so far at hawaiipublicradio.org. Just look for the Off the Road banner on the front page. Today, we've got a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member, the voice of the band Yes for decades, singer Jon Anderson. His latest album is 1,000 Hands, originally released last year and then re-released again in July 2020. A big aloha and mahalo, Jon. I appreciate you taking time to do this. It's nice to speak with you again.
Thank you, Dave.
First, where are you, and is this where you've been throughout the pandemic?
Yeah, I'm in my studio. Me and my wife, Jane, we live in Central California.
Nice. So share with us what you've been up to since the pandemic started.
The day that we were told to stay indoors and away from the world was the day that I broke my foot.
Ooh.
Getting the barbecue ready. So
Not good.
I had to wear a boot, and my beautiful wife, Jane, had to do all the work and do the cooking and cleaning, and I couldn't lift anything. But I spent all the time in the studio.
How is your foot? Have you recovered on the foot front?
Yeah, I took the boot off just 3 weeks ago. It's a slow process. They say another 4 weeks and I should be running around and jumping around like an idiot. So we'll see.
What fortuitous timing. If something like that had to happen, at least you weren't having to be out on the road or anything. It was like convenient.
No, not at all. But this last month I've been able to cook and clean and wash up and do the mandatory things you got to do when you live together. You want to take care of everything.
Has this forced the cancellation or postponement of tour dates?
Next year, I'm not looking forward to going out now because it all looks pretty chaotic to me. I had to cancel 2 projects. One was with the Academy of Music teenagers. I was going to tour with them in Europe and in America, the School of Rock. And the guy that runs the show, which is a guy called Paul Green. So we canceled that. And then this October, we were going to do a promotion of the album, but that's not going to happen.
Can you talk about the ways you've been touched by anybody that has passed away or some of those experiences in terms of the loss?
Well, I put on my website, if you think about it, if you have 100 people dying, that means 1,000 people are mourning. And so there are lots of people around the world mourning the death of loved ones. And that's something that we should say a prayer now and again for that. People that I know passing away, no, I don't know anybody.
Oh, you've been fortunate.
And, yeah, very lucky. My grandkids and my daughter and her husband live in LA. So I'm always thinking about them. And we do a lot of FaceTime.
So you're kind of secluded from them. I'm reading into that.
Yeah, simply because, I'm 75. I'm an asthmatic. I nearly died 12 years ago.
Right.
Went into a coma and don't want to do that again.
No. And you mentioned prayer. You've actually re-recorded a spiritual song of yours just for us. And explain its ties to Hawaii.
It started probably in 1987, making a record. And this lady that I'd met, Linda Livingston, she kept saying, "You've got to meet this lady from Hawaii. She's coming, it's Divine Mother Flora." She kept pestering me to meet this lady. About 3 weeks later, called me and said, "She's arriving tomorrow. You got to come and see her." And I said, okay. I went to this house and there was only about 4 people there from Hawaii, Asian. So I walked in and there was this little lady on a couch surrounded by flowers. Reminded me of my mother very much. I've been trying to meditate for years at that point in time. She said, "Sit down," and asked my name. And she looked at me, she said, "You know something?" I said, "No, that's why I'm here." She said, "Well, God is free." And I said, "Yes." And she said, "You've been trying to meditate." And I said, "Yeah, I just can't stop the ego mind, And she said, "Well, let's meditate." And we did. And I went somewhere with her in this meditation into a wonderful heavenness of something. I don't know where. I even stopped breathing. I could tell that in my meditation. But there I was in this beautiful energy. And some 15, 20 minutes later, I came back down to where I was. She looked at me and said, you know, you're very ripe. And now you know where to go. You have to practice, okay? So I said, thank you very much. And she gave me a prayer in my meditation. It reads, thou art mother, thou art father, thou art friend and companion, and so on. And so I went off on tour. I was in Paris when I was still trying to remember the prayer. It was just driving me crazy. So I actually wrote a song of the prayer. I sent you that song I did this morning. You can play that to the folks listening on the radio.
That's cool. John re-recorded a version for us. We'll play a little bit coming up.
Then on, it was a question of realizing my spiritual path was now embedded in me, and I started to grow ever so slowly. And I've been singing about spiritual things all the time in many different ways with Yes. And so in a way, it felt the right time to be awakened, if you like.
What a great thing that it's connected to Hawaii like that. That's really powerful. And that's smart of you. The good way to remember the words, put it in a song, then you can always immortalize
and
it.
I had many events. Me and my wife would go to Kauai almost every year. Some 12 years ago, I got caught in a riptide, nearly drowned on the northern coast of Kauai.
Wow.
I couldn't get back. I was in a panic, and my asthma kicked in, and I could hardly breathe, and I was dog paddling, trying to get over the big waves because I'd gone way out. And in my head said, just lie back, relax, just lie back. So I'm lying there on the ocean looking up, thinking, I wonder if the helicopter's going to come and get me. And I said goodbye to my wife and my children and everybody that I know. I did. And then the voice said, now, John. And I was going up with the waves. And I thought, I'm going to get thrown back to the beach. And I didn't get thrown back to the beach. I got thrown onto the coral. And I'm holding onto the coral. And I saw one guy walking down the sand. And I start waving to him. He waved back and carried on walking. It was like a cartoon, you know. And eventually a lifesaver came and plucked me out of the water. My wife came running and looked after me and everything. But it was so strange that the guy would wave back.
He thought you were just waving.
I met him the day afterwards, and he said he was sorry. I said, how you doing? He said, I'm sorry about yesterday. It's funny at the time.
Well, it's a great story. Yeah, I can see the comedy of that. You're like hoping for a rescue. Oh, not so fast. But... What are other experiences here?
Well, after I met Divine Mother Flora, I would stop in Honolulu, spend a little time with Divine Mother. There was one time I'd been to Indonesia, and I'd been on this island called Tiaman, and I had this visitation of, one might say, a diva or a fairy. So I was telling this lady I knew there in Honolulu, her name was Jocelyn Fuji, and she said, I like what you're saying. You've got to meet Nanaviri. This lady, she's a real shaman, and she actually sings with the fairies in Kauai when she goes to Kauai. I met this lady who was very tall with a beautiful white sort of crown of her hair. She said, why don't you come to Kauai with us in a month's time? We're going on a silence up in the mountains. So we met a month later at the airport and went up into Koki Lodge.
Wow.
And it was just an extraordinary event. So the connections that I have with Hawaii from a spiritual standpoint are very, very special. Thou art mother, thou art father, thou art friend and companion, thou art knowledge and wealth, thou art all in all.
It's Jon Anderson, the voice of the band Yes for decades, and a newly recorded version of his prayer song with origins right here in Hawaii, as he explained. And tomorrow we'll learn how his latest album, 1,000 Hands, brought together a cross-section of music icons and get some great storytelling too. Hear this segment, the complete song he recorded for us, and everything we've aired so far in our Off the Road series at hawaiipublicradio.org. I'm Dave Lawrence.
Thou art Father, thou art Mother,